Are we ready? I'm sorry we're so late, but we can start on time. Councilman, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so TDR legislation, Mitch Pally, Lyle Wells, who else is coming up to talk about this? Whoever's coming up, come up. The Havaseas, only one? All?
The assessors.
The assessors, okay. Mr. Cuddy, I know you drafted something, and I still have not looked at it. So I guess you're going to give me this thumbnail. Is Bob sitting in on this?
No, but he had to leave, he was here.
Okay.
Bill sitting.
Bill, are you sitting in on the TDR thing in Bob's place?
And if you want.
Yeah, why not? We're a fun group.
The present TDR program is difficult to go through. It's a double recording process when you get through the certificates. The market is a market that's not there. There isn't any place to go.
You have a copy of the draft?
Yeah, it's here, but I had given out copies. More copies. I can
It's
give
sitting
you-
on
I
my
can give you
desk
back.
somewhere.
And so what we tried to do is to take what we thought was an awkward process and to simplify it somewhat. And I think in simplifying it, we may have also achieved some other.
Oh, sure.
Oh, here, I
That's got his notes on it.
This one you presented, this one
That's
November
right, it's the
2nd, right?
same one.
Okay.
Can I have that Jim upstairs?
I'll let you copy mine.
Here's a copy.
Yep, thank you.
I did read it.
So what we're trying to do is to simplify it, we thought, and also perhaps in the long run attract more people who buy TDRs. The first thing that we wanted to do was to have the seller, who's the farmer, be able to come to the town and to essentially sell his TDRs through a process with the planning director and the controller. What we would do is we would have them prepare title certification, which is what they do now in the survey, and come in and have that acknowledged as the proper site, which is not too hard to do because it's in the APZ zone, but we'd like to expand it. And ultimately what they would do is they would get a check from the town. So what you would do is you would bring in the survey, you would get the planner to say, yes, this is in the APZ zone, as it now is. And the town itself would be paying and buying the TDR. Now, that has a real significance to the seller because we're going to do two things. The seller then doesn't have to pay a New York State transfer tax because what he's doing is he's essentially selling that to the town. There is no
Yeah,
in
okay.
the long run.
And we're gonna put that in a bank?
Yes.
In a
Now,
bank?
I'm going to set up
Special trust.
setting up a special trust, exactly, that is just going to be used for the purchase of TDRs. The money is going to come from the other side, and that is the developer. As the purchaser of TDRs, is going to pay the town. He would come and he could buy TDRs. He wouldn't have to do any recording because what he would do is come in and say, put them at this site, he would get a certificate for a specific site. Not transferable, so you can't have somebody buying many TDRs and selling them to other people. We thought it would be a lot easier to do. We thought it would allow a better market. We thought that the way that you could get to the price was to find out the price that was being set by the county for South of the Riverhead TDRs development would be an exact price and everybody would know. But in the end, if you go through it, I think it's an easier system to do. Right now, it's a very lengthy procedure to go through at least 2 recordings. I think you don't need to do the 2 recordings. I think the only recording that needs to be done is the deed or development. It's to say that the area is preserved. You shouldn't have to do that.
So this is what I envisioned. Actually, I wrote the first TDR statute that the town board scrapped. So if, this is what I had envisioned, is this what you're envisioning, that your site plan resolution, and Lyle, you can speak to this, would say you need to buy X number of TDRs. It may or may not say the price, because we may or may not know the price. Then you're gonna come to the town, give us a check for, say, $1 million, and then the town would take that $1 million and go buy TDR someplace. Farmland Select Committee would go buy TDR someplace.
So go in the trust.
The money would go into trust. The farmer could come to the town and say, I want to sell X number of TDRs, and he wouldn't have to go any further. He would then sell them to the town and get the money.
But the Farmland Select Committee then would be, probably should have.
I don't even know if you need the farmland select.
Well, who's gonna be determining what?
I think all you're doing is saying, we already know where the basis is for selling. It's the APZ zone. So if you have somebody confirm that there are 10 rights in that zone that this person has, then he can come to the town and say, I want to sell those 10 rights. And there shouldn't have to be any.
Well,
There's probably a lot of people that want to sell rights. How do you pick and choose?
I think it's still gotta go through the Farmland Select.
And what portion of the property, and that portion is properly identified in the tax map book, so that people are aware of the fact that
Well,
it
they have
has.
to get a survey. Same thing as you do now. They have to get a title certification.
Well, yeah.
But once they've done
I'll
that,
pay for that.
then it would be known that this was a parcel of APZ.
The only drawback to that is there's 0 money now.
Yeah.
I mean, potentially, the town could say, I'm gonna say, I'm guessing, throw $1 million and buy $1 million, Farmland Select Committee, because it's gotta go through the Farmland Select Committee. That's the way the whole statute has always been set up. That the Farmland Select Committee comes and buys, say, $1 million worth of rights. Then the Havaseas come in, they need to buy rights. They write a check to the town. That $1 million worth of rights gets allocated to the TDR program, to the planning board.
But the way it works right now is you go to the planning board, and the planning board agrees that this is the proper site. And I'm saying, I'm not sure that you need a planning board to agree to that, because you really are saying, we know where the area is, we know it's the APC zone. So if we give a survey of 10 acres, and it's each acre is a full acre, but you give a survey to the planner and say, this is the area that I'm coming from. So you don't need somebody to confirm it. The planner knows that it's in the APC zone. It
That
shouldn't be a
would
hard
go
thing to do.
through, it would go through the farm.
It doesn't right now go to the farm committee, it goes to the planning board, and the
And I
planning
know,
board.
and I don't
keeps-
want, that's what I don't think about it, because
Well,
you've got
that's because
people.
the town is not expending any of their money. Why should they go to the Farm Select Committee, which is in charge of spending town monies, overseeing town programs? Their role as the Farmland Select Committee is to oversee preserved lands within the town of Riverhead, preserve farmlands.
Where's the $1 million coming from for seed money?
I don't know.
No, we're not,
It's an initial startup.
the startup would come from the buyer. And obviously,
But I need to.
the developer is gonna have to come to the town to say, I want X number of TDRs. The town is going to say, yes, we can sell you TDRs, because we're in the business of selling the TDRs. And so they're gonna have to come and fund this to start it, yes.
So the developer comes and funds it.
That's right.
So how do you know the price for TDR?
Because what we're
Market
doing is
risk.
saying the average price that the county has charged for the last purchase of development rights, whether it's in the county, Riverhead or Central, or the North Fork, so that we have some way of defining the prices.
That may have to be updated.
Well, we may
Every
not-
6 months, every 6 months we look
you
at
have
it.
to know it and see, that's right. And you do it.
Afterwards, say a farmer wants to sell TDRs, we don't have a buyer, and gonna be obligated to buy these if we hold on to
No,
them.
because you're only gonna be able to buy what you have money for. You can't buy something that you don't have money for.
Well, it's the same thing, only so many TDRs can be redeemed. If there's no purchaser for the TDRs, then there's no way to sell the TDRs.
There's no sense even buying TDRs unless you have a project that needs them. Really.
Yes. And
Yeah,
so,
but he doesn't, he's saying that the farmer's gonna come to us and say, these, my TDR, here's my survey.
Right.
The town, you have to, no, we don't have a developer yet.
Right.
The town should buy this and put it in a trust, so when the next developer comes, you'll have it to sell them, and then they'll reimburse us. You're talking about reimbursement.
no, you don't even need to do that, because all it has to happen is it has to be a separate event. The developer comes and says, I want to buy 10 TDRs. And he pays for 10 TDRs, and the price is like, right now, it's $62,000 for each one. So he gives the town a check for $620,000, plus 1%, and the 1% is to pay back the farmer for the cost of the survey. So when you get done with all of this, the farmer actually doesn't pay for the survey. He doesn't have to pay the tax, and neither does the developer have to pay tax. Right now, you pay tax both ways. When you buy, you have to pay a kind of Bay tax. When you sell, you have to pay New York State transfer tax. This would eliminate both of those taxes.
The only
It'd be much
difference I
like the
see
county.
in that program is you give us the 620,000 plus the 1%, we give it to the Farmland Select Committee, and they purchase the property. And we hope,
But what's the priority of whose properties? Because when this bank's created, I'm sure there's a lot
Well,
of
that's-
big inventory of TDR. Who do we
Well,
pick
we're
and
not, he
choose?
says we don't have
That's
to.
what
That's
the
where
We don't
And
have
that's
to.
why we go back to the committee, exactly, they would say this is
Yeah, but he says
priority.
we don't have to do a bank. We just wait till the developer
As
does it.
goes, we have to think of priority, who's,
You may want to
They
find out.
just keep doing it the way they're doing it now, it just gets funneled through the special trust account to
The question we have from the assessor is that we're required, if they sell it to the town, we're required to lower the value under state and county law. We're required to lower the assessed value on that property. Currently, the way it works now is that if there's a willing buyer and seller, they negotiate the price. Okay? So now, if this farmer chooses to sell these credits to this developer, what happens is that the assessment gets lowered on this property here. And the assessment then gets raised on this property here. Okay? So here's the question. You buy it, we lower the assessment, you're sitting on it. Where's the taxpayer benefit? Because we have to, it's gonna change the
who's
tax rate.
sitting on?
You're sitting on it because you're in your bank, because you haven't sold them yet.
You're
You could be sitting on it, we're required to lower the assessment under the law.
That's
No,
We have no choice in that.
what I'm saying is, don't worry about that, because what I'm saying is it's not a true TDR program, it's a fee. Now it's a fee, because what it's gonna be is, the fee, the board's gonna set the fee, however we set the fee, and it's gonna say 10 credits, $62,000 an acre, you give us $620,000. We put it in our trust account, you raise his assessed valuation when that survey lands on there, so you can get the VIG on that, and then the Farmland Select Committee takes the 620 in a separate transaction.
But now, again, my point being that the way the program is set up now, if we're lowering here, we're raising here at the same time. Automatically, so the tax rate doesn't change for the public.
It promotes development, so now you can complete the homes and they can get the tax revenue on the homes.
That I understand,
So,
again, that
that's
I understand, but if these TDRs, because they're not a lot of them being sold right now,
Right,
if these TDRs are sitting
right. I
for
agree with
2
you.
years, I've lowered your assessment, and
No,
the taxpayers haven't
You're
benefited.
not lowering any assessment.
We're required under the law.
No, you're not lowering any assessment, because what you're doing is, it's actually better for the taxpayers, because what you're doing is, you're raising, I understand the law, you're raising his assessment,
not
I'm not
until
raising
he,
his
not
assessment,
until he
I'm lowering
knows
his
it.
assessment.
lowering it.
I'm lowering it because I've removed those rights from that property.
No, you're not doing, take that transaction out, you're not doing that.
Once he sells them to you,
No,
I'm
no,
required
you're
under
not
the law.
selling anything. I'm saying it in a different way, you're not selling anything. Lyle's gonna come in, the planning board's gonna set a fee, 10 TDRs. You're gonna go to the town board resolution that says a TDR for this 6 months of this year is $65,000 an acre.
Okay.
You're gonna pay a fee to the town of $650,000. I like that better than 620,000. So you're gonna pay a fee to the town of $650,000. Grant gets his approval, you raise his assessment on his approval. Nothing gets lowered until the Farmland Select Committee takes that $650,000 and buys a piece of property.
No, well, see, that's not what he said to begin
No, that's
with.
not what he's saying.
That's not what he said.
That's
not.
not what I'm seeing in
Well,
the law.
I'm not
and
sure
what
that
is
it's
written
not
here.
a great deal different than what he's saying, because you
I haven't
don't
read
have
what
to,
he said, but
you
that's.
don't, yeah, you don't have to do it at the same time. His concern is that you have to do this both at the same time. But what I think Sean is saying is that one is gonna happen and then the other is gonna happen. And I'm not sure that you're getting hurt by that, because if the developer comes in and buys, you're going to raise.
If he does it within a
So-
year's time.
so we don't need any
law,
seed
we
money
can
then.
lower it.
We're not buying anything, we don't need no seed, we don't need this $1 million
The seed
that we were
money-
talking about.
seed money
No,
comes
but
in
initiate
from
it,
the
we do it
developer.
on-
That's
We're
right.
not buying anything, which it's gonna be the same way it is now, except it's gonna go through a trust instead of, huh?
I'm a little confused. Yeah, he
Well,
hears
well, that's not what he said
Yeah.
when he first sat down here. He said we were gonna buy, the farm was gonna come, show us a survey, and we were gonna buy it and put it in a trust.
That's correct.
That's what you
Okay,
said.
That's right.
That's not what Sean's saying. Sean is saying we're not gonna purchase it until he's ready to buy it, and then we'll purchase it from him.
So,
That's what
no,
Sean
that's-
said.
No, that's not what
I
they're
don't
looking
think-
for.
I don't
There's
think
there's
But,
no things what they're looking for.
but-
Yeah, yes,
The original one written in
that's
19.
not,
We're on the right page.
we're on the right page.
We're on the same
Yes,
page.
Yes.
I'm with you.
But that's not
That's not-
the way to do it. The way to do it is just set the fee for the subdivision, Stoneley Woods. Here's your fee. You need to buy 10 credits. The town board tells you how much each credit is worth, 65,000 an acre. You're gonna pay us 650,000. It's gonna go into the special trust. The Farmland Select Committee can then make a decision, do I buy 10 acres, or am I gonna wait to buy, get another couple $1 million and buy a larger farm? And then the Farmland Select Committee will do what they do, and they do it very well, then find the farms to buy. Because what's happening now, the way it happens now is Ed Tucio sells this piece, another developer, farmer sells this piece, and you don't have contiguous property, it's just broken up
Well, it's
all over the
right,
place.
yes.
Yeah.
The Farmland Select Committee is much better, more adept at saying, okay, here's the farm, we're gonna take this entire swath of property, you put the covenant on the property. I mean, I use Ed Tucio because he's probably got 10 different covenants on the properties.
John, except for what Sean is just saying, I'm not saying something different. I think he's talking about the farm committee, but we're not talking anything really significantly different. I think what he's saying is
No,
probably
no, I know what he's saying.
Okay.
I know what you said.
But I
You
think-
said we were gonna start a bank. We were gonna pay farmers for their property, we were gonna start a bank, and then we were gonna,
The bank is gonna come from the developer paying the money. That's not.
well, that's what we're gonna wait for a developer, then we're gonna, it has nothing,
Then it's,
it's the same as it is now.
No,
We'll
it's
wait
not.
for a
No, it's
developer.
not the same as now.
We use the town as a focal
When I
point,
said
so you don't
when I
have to
wrote in
transfer
2000,
taxes and
when I-
whatever.
Well, that's a different,
The market rate,
but
see,
basically.
It's just to remove
There's not gonna be
real
a
estate
mass
and
rush.
transfer
Once
tax
it's
basis.
it's gonna be like every farmer's gonna have to
Exactly.
sell their rights. Right now,
It's also
it
what it
is short of, it is unbelievably cumbersome. If we need 15, 20 credits, we have to go to this guy who's got 4, this guy who's got 8, what's the price of this one? You can't budget, you can't plan for anything, it slows down development, it utterly stops development. The program doesn't work, it needs to be streamlined. Sean said it perfectly, it is become de facto a building permit fee. Because in order for us to get our building permit, we have to have the right in place. We look at it as a fee, that's it.
No, I
So,
agree
I mean,
with you.
If it's not streamlined, development is at an utter, it just halts. I mean, we're the only ones who are doing it because
Some people in the audience like
Okay,
that.
so anyway, let me get this, I agree with 100% with you. The farmer will then go to the farm select committee and say, this is the property I wanna sell. Here is my survey. The farm select committee will collect all these surveys. They will put something together. And then when a developer comes and to purchase, the farm select committee will say, okay, well, let's start here, that he needs 10 acres. We'll give him this 10 acres here, and the next time we'll give this 10 acres, and we'll put it all together. Okay, and I agree 100% with you. That is something different than what he opened
But
up.
that's different than our proposal.
That's different
because-
than your proposal, that's
Only
correct.
because of the farm committee.
And I agree,
intervening,
I
okay?
agree with him,
And
and I agree with Sean. I don't agree with the town purchasing the property and holding it.
I was under the same misimpression when, Mr. Cuddy, when you first came up here, it made it sound like we would be obligated to
That's
provide
right,
any form
yes.
of land that
No, you
came to
can't,
us.
you couldn't be. How could you?
Well, that was our question.
That was our question, and that's how you said it.
That's
Like
why
this
the
bank
assessors
that
were
we
here,
have.
they're trying to
That's
figure out how we're
Who's
supposed
initiating the
to
money?
change the value.
That's
here.
right.
Okay. You couldn't be until you had the money, first of all. I mean, it would be.
Well, that's why he said we had put seed money of $1 million.
No, no.
Huh?
Well, it might not be a bad idea, we
No,
can get it at
so
60 and
That-
use
that-
some for 70.
That's out. We don't have to
That'd be
do
a good
that.
idea.
That's what I'm
Difference
saying.
between your
I want to
proposal-
clarify so
All right,
everybody
all right,
knows what we're
all right.
talking
The
about.
difference between the proposal I made and what Sean is saying is that you go to the farm committee for priority selection. I said that you wouldn't have that happen only because you didn't have the money to do it. In his case, he's going to find a way to give the farmer the money because at that point, they're going to have priorities. I didn't have that.
We're not purchasing it. The developer's gonna purchase it. But we don't need any money.
If like, if the developer's gonna pay a fee, and then the farm select committee can decide when to purchase.
Yes, and then the farm
That
committee.
makes sense,
It
doesn't
makes
it?
sense.
So the committee can
I mean,
do
the
what they
simplest
do.
form is it makes the town
You said
the
yes?
focal point. It makes them the broker, more or less.
That's right.
That's right, that's what
It
we
cuts
are.
out the New York State transfer tax, and with an extra percent, it helps with survey maps. I understand.
Yeah.
All right, Lyle, why is it to some extent?
Takes
makes
away the
sense
private,
for
yeah.
Well, I think what you're hearing is from the buyer's side, in regards to some of the problems that the TDR program has experienced in its short lifespan that we've seen here. From the seller's side, having a market that is not dictated by the county, that's where a lot of the problems have come in, is that the county has always lowballed any sellers of any development rights.
You know, I wouldn't use the county.
That's what I'm,
I would probably,
it's gonna have to be done on appraisals.
I think we would probably do is we would set the price every 6 months. We'd have to commission a sort of an ongoing appraisal to
Right.
update from Given or somebody. I was not Given. And the board would set the price. To some extent, it would be county. You know you're gonna pay us more than you do it on your own, because we're gonna incorporate the price of, well, you wouldn't pay more, we're going to incorporate the survey price, the cost of title insurance, there's the deeds, all that is gonna have to be incorporated into it. Sometimes the town's gonna be on the plus, when the market's declining, the town will probably make more money, when the market's increasing, the town will make less money, but that's how I see it working, and that does sort of, I don't have to read this because this has to be changed if we agree with that proposal that I've laid out.
Again, just as long as I understand, from the assessor's point of view, is that there is no transaction of the town paying in advance for the credits. Because we have a year's time to lower the value of the assessment. And that's that's our concern. Because if it doesn't land anywhere, we're not raising it.
Yeah, you want that teeter-totter to stay even.
Exactly.
Well, it would be in our favor because it's gonna land on his property because he's gonna get the right to develop. So you're gonna increase his value.
But that's only when that transaction happens, and again, if the town's not the one doing the transaction, doing purchasing in advance, and then sitting with this property.
I can't imagine that happening.
Because that's the only thing, what we're trying to figure out how this is gonna work, because I'm
One
gonna
comment is
I can't
in
read.
regards to assessment though, I would say the majority and the percentage has got to be very high. Within the APZ, they're already enrolled within the Ag Districts program, and the value that is given those properties even prior to the
Right.
sale of development rights is very low.
Yeah, but then we lower it again once the TDR.
The actual assessment.
Yeah, but the ag program, last time I checked with Paul, is a better assessed valuation than the TDRs being removed.
No, it's the opposite. The TDR is lower, well, the ag program is called the development rights, is that?
I don't,
Yeah,
well, that's not what I was told.
yeah, the ag property, the property
If you look
still
at
has
tax
its right to
bill,
develop.
tax bill, I think
Still has its rights to
Am I
develop,
right?
and they can sell
you may
those.
be confirmed.
So,
Okay, right. Well, I'll have to ask Paul, I think
yeah,
that
that's
the
all
ag
it
is.
is. It goes from, it does drop. I verified with Paul just before I came in here too, because you know, we just talked about this, and he said, no, because it wants to be transferred.
I think it's safe to say there's probably more willing sellers than there are willing buyers right now.
Okay, so,
But
So
let
that's
me,
what-
on
in a
that
sense,
note, if
if
I
it's
could
buying it,
just,
you're not really willing to do it.
on that note, if I could just say,
You can.
so the farmer or the seller is going to come to the town and say, this is my farm, it's 100 acres, and I want to put it in the bank so that when these people want to buy 50 TDRs, they can come and here you have my survey. How is the seller going to, the seller's gonna have to front the survey cost
no, we're
Until-
not doing that.
until,
We're not doing that. What we're doing is they're gonna pay, the planning board's gonna pay a fee, the planning board's gonna extract a fee from them based on what we determine the value of development rights to be. So on 10 acres, $65,000 an acre, the fee's gonna be $650,000, probably right in the planning board resolution. When he pays that fee to the farmland select committee, the farmland select committee will then, maybe it'll be right away, maybe it'll be a year from now, buy development rights with that 650,000.
okay.
We're not gonna buy it back. The farmland select committee is gonna have surveys that they can sell. The
They're gonna
farmer's gonna
create the
give them a
image.
survey.
After they collect the money, they're gonna
I
get
think
the
the
survey.
process will be,
Right.
There's not much to it.
10 farmers will come in and say, yes, I'm interested in selling my development. I'm not gonna do a survey, I'm not gonna do anything, I'm just saying, I have some development rights.
And the farmland
If
committee
the
will-
town then approaches them and says, we now have money to purchase development rights, the value is $65,000. Are you interested in proceeding with
That's
the sale?
different from what he did.
That's the process right now, it's just that the developer is going directly to the farmer, and
That's
not really
correct.
the town that is.
That's more simple.
What the receiving area is asking for is certainty
Come on up, Anne Marie.
that they'll have development rights.
Because you're gonna be writing something
Without
when
having to
someone
have
turns there.
20 transactions, 4 from this, 5 from that, 10
Great,
from
great
that.
certainty for them. Well, that's not, they don't have to go through all this.
Okay, I'm gonna try to lay this out the way I see it, and it could be crazy. We're probably not gonna look at Mr. Cuddy's thing right now completely. What I'd like to be able to see us do, and, is that instead of having the crazy complicated farmland program, or TDR program now, town board will, say twice a year, set the value of farmland per acre. We may have to commission an appraisal to do that. I know it's gonna, sometimes it's gonna be right, sometimes it's gonna be wrong, but it's not gonna be, listen, hear me out. So we're gonna set a value, and we're gonna put, I shouldn't call it the VIG, we're gonna put the cost of the transaction on top of it. It's the VIG. You're gonna put your survey on top of it, your title insurance, your recording fees, everything. And that's gonna be the value per acre. What's gonna happen is Grant comes in, decides he wants to do a subdivision. Planning board, Mr. Wells' planning board says you have to buy 10 TDRs. In the planning board resolution, it's either gonna say buy 10 TDRs, or it's gonna say buy 10 TDRs at the board price of $65,000 an acre. Stoneleigh will then deposit with the Farmland Select Committee $650,000. For that, he gets the ability to develop his property. That money then goes to this Farmland Select Committee to do what they've always done, which is buy farmland.
Right. I see that happen, yes.
I think that's the streamline. It's so funny, because that's exactly how it was written back in 07, 05. I don't remember why it got, so.
Did you save the file?
We did try to look for it, but the computer, the town attorney computer got fried.
And the farmland cement committee will have all these people and the farmland that can be purchased, and they'll put stuff together.
And I think sometimes, we're still, the Farmland Select Committee is still gonna have to commission appraisals. That's where the value's gonna come from. You're still gonna have to commission an appraisal, but sometimes we're gonna be on the leading edge. Sometimes we're not gonna be on the leading edge, depending on the market. But we're always gonna, be roughly where we should be.
So to the extent there is a loss, there's a fluctuation in the market between the time the developer comes in and the town has set the price,
Right.
and the time that the farmland committee actually recommends the purchase of the town board. If there's a fluctuation in price, how does the town make up the potential deficit?
I don't know that the town is, I don't know that I, as a board member, would worry about that, because I think what you're gonna have is, sometimes you're gonna be at a loss, and sometimes you're gonna be at a gain, because if you buy 10 acres, it's more likely gonna be $65,000 an acre. If the Farmland Select Committee says, we have this 100-acre parcel here, and we're amassing all this money, it's more likely gonna be $50,000 an acre.
But if they get an appraisal, which they have to before sale, and that appraisal is lower than what we've collected, we're gonna have to pay back that
No, we're not.
developer.
No, we're not.
You don't think so?
No, we're not gonna pay it back, because that's where the town is taking the risk, a little bit of a risk here, because sometimes you're gonna be on the winning edge, or sometimes you're gonna be on the losing edge. In a declining market, we'll probably wind up with more money. In a market that is doing better, we may be a little bit behind the power curve, but from what we have to look at it is overall, is that make sense to the community? And at the planning board, you guys are just gonna set the price, not the price, but you're gonna set the number of TDRs.
Yeah, I wouldn't set the price in the resolution, I
No,
would
you
just
just
set the
set
number of TDRs, because by the time they go to purchase it, the price could have changed.
Well, the price is gonna have to be fixed at planning board resolution, so you're gonna have to have a way for him to to deposit money in the bank.
Yeah, but I would just say at the time they find, whenever, because they're not necessarily, as soon as they get their site plan approval, go buy the TDR, they wait. So it should be at whatever the prevailing
Yeah, that's
rate is
true.
at the time.
Right, could be your cutoff, like if you buy them by this point, it's this
Well, the
price.
prevailing rate, whatever the town board rate is at the
No,
time.
he's right, because you could come to us, that planning board resolution expires, what, are they good for 6 months, or no, a year?
A year.
A year, so if you wait 6 months to pay all your fees, it's gonna be at the price that is at that time when you pay your fee. So we'd wanna keep it as close as possible. So, the real question is, can we legally roll the dice in a declining or an expanding market, knowing that somewhere the town's gonna fall?
I don't think it could be a loss of money to the town, just being, we might have charged $65,000 for 10 acres, and so we got $650,000. We may not be able to buy 10 acres a little bit later, we might only be able to buy 9 or 8.
Right.
So it wouldn't be a loss of money, just we wouldn't be able to purchase as much as we had hoped to.
Or you could do what we say.
Like,
If
we're
we roll
from
it in,
farmland,
if we roll
it's
it
gonna
in.
be a
But if
lot
we
more
roll
money
it
than
in-
for buying it on,
But if we
Middle
roll,
Road or something.
and as Sean said, if we rolled in a bunch of different projects into one to
See, that's the
accumulate
thing
a
that
100-acre farm, I mean, nobody's gonna come in and make a
Numbers.
100-acre, get 100
Toxic waste.
TDRs, but we save up to it, we can purchase it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Farm,
but
if we rolled in,
here's
might
what I'm
be
saying,
cheaper.
when Stoney first put their site plans in, and if we would have said the acreage was $95,000 an acre, that's what it was going for at that time, and now it's maybe going for $65,000 an acre, they're gonna lose money again. Don't you think they're not gonna come to the town and say, listen, we lost all this money, we want it back?
Oh, the code's gonna have to prohibit that.
They,
But that's like me, that if we, remember, we've also, in the years that we've been here, we've been purchasing development rights. I don't think I'm gonna go back to Lyle a couple years later and say, hey, the market's changed, can you give me a refund?
That's gonna be
no,
reflected
no,
in the
not
code.
now, because you already own it. But at this point, you don't own it, you're gonna pay a fee
Yeah.
of $950,000, and then you're gonna purchase it it's gonna cost the town $650,000, so the town is keeping $200,000 of your money.
Yes.
That's part of the program.
Well, if everybody agrees and they don't want a rebate,
No, you
then
can't do it.
Is the bank exclusive?
It would be exclusive to that program.
Because otherwise, we're gonna be competing in the market.
Yeah, it's gonna be exclusive. The Farmland Select Committee will get that sort of, that'll be a trust and agency account for the Farmland Select Committee to buy these projects or properties. And the code is gonna have to be explicit in that, the developer gives up any rights if we might get 11 acres instead of 10.
So the only mechanism therefore in the town of Riverhead would be to buy through this clearinghouse. In other words,
It's like the Pine Barrens Act.
right, you couldn't
In the
purchase
town
them
of Riverhead.
individually.
you couldn't go individually
Go to a
and
farmer
negotiate,
Right.
right? You have to go through the farm select committee.
And I think
Huh? You say no now.
Well,
You
that's,
say
that's
no.
the question.
You
I
see?
know.
Right.
It's gotta go through the farm select committee. There's no other agency in the town that.
I understand that. But what Anne Marie is saying is private deals again.
Right, that's what she's saying, and this is what we're,
That's why I'm shaking my head.
that's,
Because
that's it.
otherwise, you have
Yeah.
the municipality competing
Right,
with free market.
Or we do anyway.
right.
Yeah, but that's where we can take a serious hit.
And
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
where-
we do anyway. We're the ones, the county is the ones kind of setting the price now. The town was setting the price. We compete with them all the time.
That happens right now.
Well,
That's what I said, there had to be a catalyst for this draft here, I don't know, it was to streamline developers, so they'll have one place to go, they don't have to, whether it was just the transfer tax or the survey, but there had to be some catalyst that created the
Actually,
structure.
the Farm Bureau and Libby came to us and said this has to be fixed.
Yeah, but
Right now it's
I
total.
still don't think we can
Yeah,
compete
but-
with.
Well, there's a lot of private deals going on and stuff.
Yeah,
right now
it's
Where's the
Right.
inventory, who has one,
I mean,
who talked to
that-
who,
There's
there's
no
no
coordination.
The
I
guys
think
ain't
you
aware
have
of it.
to almost lock it
So
up.
it's kind of
to
an
the town
awareness
does it
too.
this way, and that's the way we do it.
Yeah, but
That's what happens
see,
with
the
county.
Pine Barrens Act, yeah, but the Pine Barrens Act and the Pine Barrens Commission, there were people that were in the poor area that said, no, I'm not gonna sell to the commission, and I'm not going to, accept, give you certificates to sell, and I'm not gonna accept $35,000
Right.
per Pine Barrens credit. And those people were addressed when there was no clearinghouse, and they got a lot more for their properties, for the credit, than what they had to do as
Yes.
per the Pine Barrens
That's my
Act.
concern, is that we end up similar to what the county is, which is a one offer negotiation.
Yeah,
That's not a negotiation.
yeah,
That's not an interest in real property.
right.
It's a fee for the developer,
Mhm.
and it's a take it or leave it for the
So
seller.
the farmer.
I mean, it might work for the farmer that's saying, hey, you know what,
Yeah, but it's
I need this
revisited
money
in 6
now,
months.
so I'll put up my property, but not all the farmers should have to,
I don't know, I think
get
it
to the
works.
table at the time.
and
I
then,
guess-
Well, it could wait.
There's gotta be a public benefit here. And then there's a much bigger public benefit when in my opinion, when the Farmland Select Committee, who are the experts in this, look at the entire town and say, these are the perfect spots to be buying because it ties into other preservation pieces, then the public benefit of, gee, I almost sound like a Democrat here, the public benefit of, well, maybe not, one farmer saying, I'm gonna sell this little piece of property that doesn't go into any other, tie into any other open space, and, I wanna sell that. There may not be a public benefit to that little piece of property that got preserved, whereas.
Yeah, like some junkyard behind a.
Exactly.
And that's the
Exactly.
problem, and that's the problem that I see with it, is that once the Farmland Select Committee depicts the most valuable farmland that they wanna see preserved, that the farmers are gonna say, my property here is much more valuable than the piece of farm behind the junkyard.
Yes,
Which they are, yes.
yes, they are.
So I think that that's where we're going to, get into interest in real property.
well, that is a difficult hurdle though.
Yeah,
Because
My
absolutely.
concern is,
different farmland parcels located, be it in Calverton or Jamesport, are valued differently.
yeah.
The amount of frontage determines the value of a piece of property. And the other question I had is, when I read through this, the proposal seeks to essentially diminish any CPS transfer tax, correct?
Mhm.
Where, and does the proposed 1%, this is something for the board to think about, does the 1% processing fee make up for that percentage that you've lost in the community preservation
So that's
tax
his
that you would
version
have,
of it.
that you would have collected when you placed the density on the other parcel?
That is a question that's gotta be
Because-
analyzed.
Right, because our CPF fund
Well, you get 2%.
is limited now, and we're worried about
Right, and,
being able to afford to pay back
Yeah,
up on
and I have to
indebtedness.
go along with you, because we are
Good thinking.
the town that gets the least in CPS funds. I mean, East Hampton, Southampton get all this stuff. And now we wanna limit our CPS fund more and waive those figures,
No.
We're not paying it, the seller's not gonna pay it.
John,
or
you
buy
can
it.
build it in. That's the point.
I put 1% in here, the difference is 1%, so you make it 2%.
Yeah,
I don't have to make it.
Yeah, you build that into this fee. You've got to figure out, in the end, you guys might not want this, because we've got to figure out what it costs us to run this program.
The administrative fees and everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Not, I wouldn't even go to that, but, you know, the recording fees, the transfer tax, and then, but the real issue is, I think you're right, that, you know, I think Lyle's got a good point. We really, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. I think you would not want to keep it open for the developer to go to individual farmers. I think as, from a public policy standpoint, we're either in or out.
I think you're right.
Then
But
you better, and you better be a everyday buyer. The town better be
Wait,
an everyday
wait a
buyer.
minute.
That's right.
Did you not work with me on that farmland
No.
select committee? I could
But-
get you closed in 90 days.
But
My
the
concern
problem
is,
is,
60 a
my
couple.
concern is with the farm select committee, you said they prioritize which parcels to get
Right.
first. And what happens to the guy who's got the lousy farm that needs financial relief, that wants to sell it? He'll never get up, he'll never come up. So how do we deal with that?
That's what we're saying.
Well,
You may never get that anyway.
So this may not.
I don't know what the
how do we
criteria,
address
I really
that?
don't know what the criteria is for the farmland select.
What kind of big parcels are the next
But he
reserve
may-
parcels, as Sean had said, and
this
that's a
guy here may
priority.
go to the developer and say,
Well,
okay,
what's his relief?
he wants to
We gotta
sell you
grant him
for
relief.
You don't
65,000.
have to grant.
I'll sell it to you because I need the money, and I need it now,
Unless
and
we
you
go to
believe I'll
develop,
sell it for
right.
55,
That's the relief.
see? But, no, that's in the open market.
In the open market.
In the open market, that's not here.
But no, that's here too, because they could
Can I
come
go
with
back
a
to our
committee.
conversation?
And say, I'll do.
How does farmland select make their determination?
It's just location, if it's next to
Is
the
it by
reserve
financial
parcel.
hardship or is it by a bigger?
No, it's a
plan?
bigger,
What's the
it's a
reserve?
bigger picture, they're looking at it differently.
Right.
Yeah, they're looking at prioritizing it.
They
So it works for your better,
You want to look at social conditions for the farmer, but really,
it's a combination
should be
of both.
outside
though.
this.
It's-
Yeah.
You gotta help, it's gotta
Yeah, but
work.
we have to help the farmer. If we
I
want to
know.
have a place of farmland,
It should.
we have to look at the
Oh, I
farmers
wanna
that
help
we
the
have
farmer,
to
but I'm just
help
saying,
and say, you know, you need this, we'll help you.
So it's, you gotta look at both sides of it.
So if we're
Yeah.
given a price of 65 and then the added fees go up to 68, because of the added fees that you have to pay, or 70, this farmer that needs help says, listen, I want to sell mine for 55.
They can't get up the list.
I can't get up with this. He should have the right to go to the developer
Mhm.
and say, I got property and I'll sell you 55 an acre because I want to stay a
Right.
farmer and I
Right.
do need the
Kind of
But
money.
I
It's just
wouldn't
affecting
want
us,
him to
yeah.
go to the developer. What I would say is that he'd go to the farmland select committee, and the farmland select committee, you know,
Should be
they
aware of it.
purchased properties. There were some that were really low that they said, you know, this was a good deal because it's really low.
I think that it has to,
And they would have
Yeah, but
Model.
then we're messing around with the developers. He's paying
People that-
70,000 and we're
don't
only
want
selling
to
it for
put into the
55.
select program, that
That's-
have the
that's something
opportunity to
developers
go
have
to
to
a
bear.
developer and say.
If you're trying
"I'm
to
the
make
developer."
this so that you can move something through, one of the things you're trying to do is to expedite the process for both sides.
Mhm.
And so you can't make
Right,
it more
well,
cumbersome, you have
that's
to make
a
it less
benefit for
cumbersome.
this particular.
Right,
Yeah,
but
I don't
you know
think
what,
the
you're talking,
farmland select, if they're putting property together and they're putting this property, this guy has a piece of property over here, they're not gonna pick this guy because he's not near the property they wanna put together.
That's not true, because if it's a lower price.
Well, that's what you just said,
No, I
that they
didn't.
want
I
to.
said that if it comes in at a lower price, there were parcels with the farmland select committee, you know, there were good deals out there that the farmland select committee bought that, you know, maybe you get 20 acres as opposed to the 10 that,
It's
So we
still,
really can't set the price, we set at 62. They
Yeah,
have to have
we
the
can't.
ability to
That's
renegotiate
right.
lower.
Yes,
And
you have to.
Not up, down, that'd be like a ceiling.
That's
It's
right.
essentially, what your proposal is proposing that the town act simply as a straw.
Broker.
in part, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do is you're trying to do two things. You're trying to be fair to each side, and you're also trying to expedite the process. The process now is very cumbersome. So we're saying to you, find a way to make it less cumbersome. Find a way so that both the farmer gets satisfied, and if you have this up or down type of situation, fine. And the developer understands that they may pay higher, but that that's part of the process too.
Well,
But you're trying to get
Hope
them
the developer.
so they can get, well, they will understand because it's gonna be set forth that way.
But
And
you would,
I think they do. But you're trying to get them so that they end up, they being the developer, with a process that gets them the rights relatively quickly. You're trying to end up so the farmer gets treated fairly, whether it's through a process of negotiating that we're talking about now, or some other process. That's what we're trying to do. It doesn't matter that we have some authorship that everybody disputes and says we should do it this way or that way. But we're trying to find these two mechanisms. One, to get it done quickly, and two, to get it done
You
fairly.
want to polish it.
Right now, it doesn't work.
We want to, and I agree with you.
it's not broke.
Huh?
It's not broke, you just want to refine it.
We just want to refine it.
Yeah, I know
Huh?
how it works.
Good word.
And I think that's the thing we have to do is refine it.
Sean, the one thing that all the sides agree on here, on this side of the table, is one of the reasons it doesn't work is because we keep giving it away.
Keep giving what away?
Yield. We're talking about Chenrec, we're talking about Marriott, we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not
Right
talking
on
about, that's a
down
separate
the-
issue.
I understand.
What I'm talking about is,
Don't make the comment, the TDR program doesn't work
no, I think
when it has
I
worked.
think it works in a very piecemeal and sporadically, it sputters along, it makes the lawyers money, but it costs everybody money, and you're not getting the prime agricultural soils that the Farmland Select Committee would normally.
But on that note, I think that what we are looking at here is we're looking at a large development that needs a large number of TDR credits and cannot access that on one farm. So I think that we have multifamily housing within our zoning code where you have, maybe somebody that needs one TDR that might be able to go to that farm that's behind the junkyard and do that transaction for less than having to buy one from the TDR program, to legalize a multifamily house that's existed for years and
Okay.
years since our zoning code. And I think that you need to have both for the larger developer that can go through the TDR program, and then the farmers that opt out of that TDR program to be able to sell their farms or a portion of their farms, and pay the extra fees, pay the 2% property tax, pay the extra taxes that are associated with it, and still be less than the
But
$65,000.
it's not gonna be the farmer's choice, it's
Yeah,
never
you
the
can't-
farmer's
you
choice,
can't
it's
have two
always,
programs.
and it's always his choice.
Yeah, but it's not if you're not giving
It's
the
always the developer's choice.
multifamily homeowner an option not to buy from the TDR program.
No, it's
I-
always the developer's
But I,
choice.
I think that the town board is doing a disservice by saying that one developer was behind the junkyard. The other
I
end
know what
opened
you're
up,
talking about.
it's an open space, right? Somebody has to border to someplace, it could be bordering a road, it could be bordering houses, it could be bordering commercial stores.
I don't even know what junkyard you're talking
Well,
about.
No,
he
using it as a
mentioned it,
support.
and she,
There was-
you mentioned
You're
it.
talking about,
I know what they're talking
Soil.
about.
I'm using,
you're
I'm
talking
not,
about soil types.
I know what
By
they're
one
talking about.
conversation,
well, I
One
like to say, I
conversation.
use that as a scenario, it was never a site specific. I'm saying that I was hoping the Farmland Select had a much bigger map of what they would like to do with these TDRs and not just piecemeal it. That's what I was trying to illustrate. I wasn't being site specific about
No, I
any
know.
particular person.
But I'm saying that a farm that's behind 5 houses may not be as desirable because you're not gonna get the vistas, or they only own, 3 or 4 acres of farmland, and they'll never be able to sell the rights unless they wanna join into the TDR program.
Right.
there's no, but the point is, it's always the developer's choice, because the Havaseas are gonna come in here, and if you have both programs, they're going to have to opt into one or the other, because they're either gonna say, we're gonna go through the town one, or we're gonna go through the private one, because that's what the resolution is going to say.
Yeah.
And then it's his choice whether he buys it.
Okay, good, as long as there's an
That
option, because I wasn't hearing that before.
Well, I don't
was
know
hearing
whether there
that
should be an
everything would
option.
go through.
Well, no, I think they're looking at either one or the other now.
That's why I'm saying, I don't know that there
Yeah.
should be an option.
Well, you have to give the farmer the right to sell his property.
But he doesn't, he doesn't, well, I mean, he would have more availability to sell it, but it's going to be the decision of the developer.
That's what we did.
Whatever's the easiest for the developer, or the cheapest, easiest, or whatever business decision they make, it's the developer's
Right,
choice.
yeah, and I agree with you, but also, you also, we're here to help the farmer. And if a farmer that needs help is gonna sell their property a little less than what we're charging,
And they're not at the top of the list.
and they're not on the top of the list, then he's gonna keep going back down to the top.
The
But
selection
it may
committee
be
may look at
farmer-
that because you get more bang for the buck. So he's selling less, they'll say, let's get this
But
right
they
now.
should have that
They look
right.
at it all as being
But
bought,
they
it's
should
kind of
have that
soft.
right.
Or
They
the
should
farm
have that right.
select
To
committee
drop
can
the
say,
price.
oh.
Less,
we're
they
gonna
go,
go
all right, if they go less, we could buy more.
It's not really a right, it's an ability, but do you think we
That's-
can do both legally and right?
I don't
That's
see
what
how.
Pine Barrens actually
This
done.
side is easy, it's just that farm select side.
I don't know how you can have a clearinghouse or a central, one central stop and shop and then have private deals going on. I don't know how you can do both.
It's gonna be-
I think we're gonna have to have monies in the fund.
They don't
Because by competing with the market, we could lose. So we need to have money in the fund to cover any losses.
It's not that you get losses, what you're trying to do is get money from the developer to start with. Okay. I don't think you're gonna end up with a loss. I think
Well-
you're gonna end up in a situation where you can only spend the money that you have. You can't go beyond that. So you're gonna get money, and what you have to do is to start off with somebody buying TD. And that's-
Well, would
that's-
you agree
that's
that
important.
under your scenario, the developer would have to enter into a contract with the town, and that contract would provide for, you're paying the market rate based upon the town goes out, does the appraisal, finds a piece of parcel which has enough of the preservation credits that are required. You're gonna pay the processing fees, survey costs, and you're gonna contract for that. And the town isn't gonna close until all monies are deposited. True?
Well, I don't think we're doing it that way.
But that's
Why
why.
would- But that's the only way
We're
I
not
see
putting up
that
the
we
seed money.
protect ourselves.
That's right. I'm not worried about I'm looking for it to be a much simpler process. That we determine the rights, we have a value that we've set with the added costs, carrying costs, and then they pay that to us, just like water key money, and that goes into the bank. And then it's up to the farmland select committee to take that money and buy something. Maybe they'll buy the farm that is a lower price, maybe they'll wait because they think they can get this 100-acre farm and let the committee make a decision at a future date. The real issue is, can you have it, how do you set it up that the developer either opts into our program or opts into the other?
Right, I'm gonna have to look at that, because, just for an
You may
example,
be able
if
to.
Charles Cuddy on behalf of his client contracts with the town at $65,000 an acre, and the next developer comes along and he looks at the program and he says, all right, Charles Cuddy paid $65,000 an acre, and that's with the built-in processing fees and everything else. I now negotiate with the farmer and I'll say, look, I'll pay you today. I'll give you $63,000 and I don't have to pay any of the processing fees
Right.
and we're good to go. So we've set up a situation where there's competition with the town, and the town has publicly disclosed what their rate is. Obviously, we have to, we're required to. So
But
I'm
it's
just
the same-
fearful unless we make it exclusive.
But you have the same scenario where we publicly disclose our rate, but when we go appraise Gabrielson's farm, we may have a rate of $65,000, but Gabrielson's farm comes in at $55,000. We're not going to offer him $65,000. We're going to offer the appraised value. Because we can't offer $65,000. So that's or comes in at $75,000. Yours would
We
come in at
can't,
$95,000.
we can't do 75, we can't go above, if we create this, we can't go above, we can only
Yeah,
go
that's
up.
ceiling.
You only go-
We can't go above, because that's what we paid, so it would be,
Or you buy
if it's
rate.
less, then we can
But
buy
then what are
more.
you gonna do? You're gonna go out and do individual appraisals, you're gonna do an appraisal twice a year to establish the
They have to
overall
do
rate, and then you're
individual
gonna,
Or-
if you say, I think that farm's worth less, then you're gonna order an individual appraisal on that farm and then
We always
give them
They
a
do,
lower offer.
they have to
Yeah,
do
and while I
that
was
before
correct when I
sale.
stated early on, fair market value.
Yep.
The law is crystal clear. 261A, 64E of the town law, both provisions say fair market value. So could we do an adjustment, say, for a 3-month period? Perhaps the law would allow that. Beyond that, I don't think so.
So we could do, so we'd set it every 3 months.
Right.
But you're still paying fair market value, because you're gonna do an appraisal on each
Yeah,
unit.
but I think in the long run, this is gonna cost the developer more money.
It definitely costs, well,
Yes, it's
It
definitely
may.
gonna,
It
yeah, it may cost the
It
developer more money.
it may.
Probably not, because lawyers are charging $250 an hour by the time
Well, I
you
realize
do
lawyers make their.
all of this, and by the time you're paying, they're paying New York State transfer tax, which we're not gonna worry
Right,
about
which, well,
collecting.
that saves a little money.
They're paying, what, 2 sets of recording deeds, right?
That's right.
Instead of 1, so we're not gonna build in that, we're just gonna build in our costs.
My question
Well,
is,
no, you're gonna build
building-
in a 1% with a 2%, it could
They
go to
would pay that
2%.
anyway.
They pay that anyway.
Yeah, but they'll pay it
They pay that
without
anyway.
paying the
They
town.
would pay that anyway.
I
Yeah.
just,
My question, I'm a developer, I'm gonna put in, I'm
I
gonna put
think-
an extension, I need
See it as very
10
clear.
TDRs for my density. So I'm gonna say, okay, well, the town is charging 65,000, so I put my 650,000 into the town bank, or whatever they wanna call it, trust fund. I have to get my, and then you guys figure out who's gonna get that money. But they find a farm that is exactly 10 acres that I'd like, but it's only 45,000 an acre. So now there's 200,000 that I put up. So that, we get, that's just, you can buy land somewhere else with?
The committee, yes, he pays that fee, he's done, he doesn't care.
You don't care?
He doesn't care.
He's done.
That's our good fortune that we could buy
Exactly.
more land now. We can negotiate less.
Yeah.
see, I don't like the
They
fact
just-
of the town being the exclusive. If I'm a farmer and I own 100 acres and I don't need to sell my property right now, but if somebody comes along to me and says, I need 100 TDRs and you don't need the money, why don't you come in partnership with me or whatever, that it doesn't have to be exclusive through a bank where a developer has to pay and the farmer has to get paid. It should be up to the farmer to conduct his own business transaction as to what he wants to do. And it should be up to a developer to decide, I need 100 TDRs, where am I gonna get the 100 TDRs from? I don't wanna pay $650,000 for my TDRs, but I'll give you 20% of my hotel or 5% of my restaurant
That's
or.
exactly what you have now.
See, yeah.
It doesn't work out in one
But
case of that.
I go
You
along,
can
I go along
opt
with Will.
in to do it, or you
Lyle.
can get the
I
credits
think
from
you're gonna
somewhere
leave it
else
just
to
the way
do
it
it.
is.
Okay, we
That's
just
right.
have, we
I
have
think
to
you're not changing anything.
streamline this a little bit.
Well,
It's a process that has to be streamlined.
Right, exactly.
The law is okay, it's, we have to streamline the process.
Well,
which
it's gotta
is-
work differently.
Yeah.
It's
How does
It's
mechanics,
not okay.
the mechanics aren't in there for it to work out.
He's been in
Let
it,
me
he's
bring
a
it
seller.
Let me give you a different angle. What you're proposing is, we're now going to have one buyer for TDRs. Where currently, we now have probably 3,000 buyers
Yeah.
for TDRs.
Yes.
So, my concern is that we end up in the same box that the county finds himself in. Nobody wanting to deal with them because they're the only buyer in town.
Yeah, but you can't make that analogy because this town of Riverhead bought so many, they wouldn't even come to the county because we were moving things like this, our committee.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because we had the 2%, we could
Bob
spend
said he's
that
gonna
money.
fire me if we didn't spend 25 million.
And it was no problem. Right now, we don't have the 2%, and we're wondering what's gonna pay back that money we borrowed. He's a seller, Lyle's a seller. He knows how to sell. We are not sellers, we're here, we don't own any farmland except Gableson, Councilman Gableson. We don't own any, so I can't take anything away from the seller because he has his rights to sell up or sell down.
He's still willing
Right?
at the farmland
I
select
mean-
committee.
See?
Well, one of the things we should do immediately, and has always been contemplated, is we should map the current certificates that have been issued and in place with all the contact information, so when a developer comes in, they look at a map, and they have all the contact information, how many credits are available from this parcel, because currently the certificates that have been issued sit in a book. So if you're a developer and you come in and you're looking for rights, truthfully, the only way is really word of mouth. Sometimes they get phone calls through the farmland committee, sometimes they come into planning, they go to
We
Lyle,
went through an
who's got
exercise,
certificates.
we looked up every
It
tax
shouldn't be
record
that way.
of every vacant land in this town and sent out hundreds of letters.
You
almost
shouldn't
done
have
with
to do
loans.
that. You should-
So
you
again,
have it.
it just doesn't mean they're gonna run to the table. Like, it's just, there's not gonna be a land rush. So that's again, I mean, in our meetings, you know, we're discussing, you know, until you find it financially viable to sell your land, you may choose not to.
And you stop your project. That's the real problem, is that if this project is stopped, so what we've done, what the town has done, is created an artificial market for certain farmers that are willing to sell, and we're boosting the price up more than it has to be, because if you sent out 100 letters and got no responses, that means you have to pay more money for it. Your project is stopped. We now are doing farm, I mean, we're dictating the market that way too. We're always gonna be
Think
dictating.
about
it.
Well, and
your
it's
project
always,
out there.
it's always gonna be a willing seller though,
Yes.
whether it's TDR or PDR. So that's always gonna be dictated by market or the financial conditions of the farmer or their quote estate planning. It's
Yes.
always gonna be dictated by that. Whether or not the town acts as a clearinghouse or a broker, doesn't quote give incentive for a farmer to actually enter into this
That's
market.
true.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you look at the, as he said, the key money fee, whatever, they could clearly set the fee and it could be economically not feasible to continue the project until it reduces.
Right.
But that's the same thing as the farmer says, I need $150,000 for my TDR.
Yeah.
The project stops until it's economically feasible to.
What we're doing is breaking the project free. He pays the fee, the
That's right.
project goes.
Yeah, right.
That's
We
right.
take the risk up or down, and there was never any shortages of farmers selling when the market, you know.
When, you know, I think everybody forgets that when there was money available in this town and in the county, programs worked. There wasn't a problem. I think everybody can say
Right, we
that
spent
it's
that.
absolutely true. If the money is there, the program worked.
Yes.
And it wasn't something, I don't think, Lyle, that the farmer was hurt by having a program for preservation rights, either at the county or the town level. People were wanting to get in those programs, and they were wanting to get in them at the prices that were reasonable at those times. The only thing that stops it is not having the money available.
Right.
And so we're trying to make the money available through this type of program. That's what we're trying to do.
And
No,
that's
and,
gonna
and,
drive the
and
price
you're trying
down
to,
too,
and you're
because
trying to fix the price.
Yeah, but everybody fixes the price. When you have
To
a
the
program like
developer.
this, no, when you have a program like this, the price gets fixed. When the county does it, the price gets fixed. When the town does it, the price gets fixed. It
No,
always
just
gets
fixed
fixed.
on appraisal.
Yeah, but it gets fixed.
Yeah, on appraisal.
Sales.
No, on sale, on the appraisal.
And then the party has to decide whether they're in or whether they're out.
But
And that's
we're
what
trying to
happens.
fix
Well,
the
as
price
long as
6 months in advance, and then the
Yeah,
end
guys,
price
we're
is
done.
on the
I think we're
appraisal.
gonna end it. Now we're going in circles. I don't think there's any agreement to do anything. I think you're stuck with
I
it.
think it's great. I think if the Farmland Select wants to tell the farmers, hey, you have 4 acres, you have 5 acres, you have 10 acres, you guys want to put them into a bank and a trust, let's do it
Yes,
today.
yes.
But
The
not
process
everybody
has to be
should have to sell their TDRs through this bank. They should have other options. That's all I said. If there's farmers out there that have 100 acres, 200 acres, 5 acres, 1 acre that they want to put through this bank and they want to opt to do that, then they can. If there's farmers that don't want to do that, but want to sell their farmland, and you'd rather go to them, then there should be options. It shouldn't be strictly through the government.
Right.
I think that makes it a hard program. Just-
You have the same program you have now, and the only difference is that if we're both in it, you're still fixing the price. Because nobody's gonna go to the Wells farm if they know that the $65,000, it's always gonna be the developer that fixes the price. Nobody's ever gonna go to the Wells farm to buy property. Once we start our project, our program, the price is gonna be $65,000. We're never gonna go to Wells because we only have $65,000 an acre. You're never gonna go to Wells because you only have $65,000 an acre. And so there, it's the same situation, and there's no, if there's somebody at $55,000 an acre, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if there's ever gonna be anybody lower. And my biggest fear really is that we can't get the projects, commercial whatever it is, that they're stalled because you've got a few farmers holding them hostage, because that's bad too. That's the wrong direction. So this is a comfortable median, I think.
Well, I'm not a tax lawyer, but I would assume that if the farmer dies and he wills his farm to his children, they have to pay an inheritance tax.
Maybe.
Right? Well, maybe. So, those people who have to pay this, that want to keep half the farm, might want to sell half the farm at a reduced price so they can pay that tax. Right?
You can defer the tax for a
Huh?
long time.
Yeah.
Well, you
And-
can,
and-
it's not a tax, but,
There are cases of fire sales, there's no question.
yes, yeah, right, there will be
Lot of
that.
nuances in the farm market.
So I think that what we need is something that refines it and say, this is, we can streamline it by doing it this way. Your program's good, but it could be better. Here's how it could be better, by streamlining so the buyer doesn't have to be so cumbersome and trying to buy. And I think that's the way I would look at it, to see what would happen.
Well, if there is no consensus with respect to the proposed bank or processing, perhaps there would be consensus among the town board for Bill and I to work on streamlining and
you know what, I was gonna
notice
say,
provisions and
please.
what was talked about early on in the program, so it wouldn't be so onerous on applicants seeking to.
I
Always
think it
res-
would be very simple for the farm select committee or for you. You said you already have a list of farmers that are willing to sell, to just reach out to those farmers and say, do you want to put your farm credits into a bank? And the ones that want to can, the ones that don't have any desire to sell today or next month or 6 months from now or 10 years from now, don't have to. But if at a later date they decide that they want to sell them privately, but at least you'll have a bank of credits that you know that these guys can tap into when they need it.
We're not doing that because we can't, first of all, you
No, I'm
can't
saying
use,
No, no, they're
a
gonna
bank
put-
of prospective
They're
sellers.
gonna put a letter in, I have 10 acres or I have 50
yeah, we
acres
can, we can do
here.
that. You know what's interesting, and this is my observation of doing the Farmland Select program for 3 or 4 years, whatever I did. The farmers are skeptical, and Lyle, or you could jump in here.
out there, I see.
Carl, you could jump in, of the government coming in to buy their TDRs. But my impression is they're probably even more skeptical of some developer from Manhattan coming in and buying their TDRs. That's my impression, because we never ever had a
That's why we
problem.
hire lawyers regardless of who we deal with.
Yeah, we never ever had a problem
That's a
with
problem too.
getting farms. And if you're sending out 100 letters, that's proving my point, that the farmers are a lot more skeptical of you guys from coming from the, up island, if you will, to buy the farm than the town of Riverhead. And heck, most of the farmers in the town of Riverhead program didn't even have lawyers. I always would tell them to get
Oh, we
lawyers.
did, right.
But, we walked them through the process.
But, I agree with you, there's a reason why Lyle's here, and Brian's here, and Charles
Right,
here. Obviously, there's something that they're asking the town to address.
Yes.
So, let's, I have no
Development
problem with you.
community is saying,
If you and Bill get
make
together
sure
and
we
figure out
have
how we
these
can
things
address those
available.
concerns,
Right, so
even if it's
tell
preventative.
us what the price
At
is.
the end of the
Get a
day,
bank of prospective
the town has
sellers.
created a program, and it is simply remove the what if from the financial institutions. Financial institutions are running this, make the world go round, from commercial to residential to anything, small scale, large scale. I need so many credits to make my office building large, to make my development grow.
Right.
What if you don't get them? The loan doesn't go through. And that's the, now you lose building permit fees, building inspection fees, tax revenue. It just, the list goes forever, and it's so,
It's too
the
tedious.
town needs to remove the self-imposed what if
Right.
to the development community.
Yes, and that's why I think that Ed Marie and Bill can look at this, put something together, that will take these projects out and streamline.
I don't know.
There's already so many
But
elements we
yeah,
deal with, but it
we're
doesn't
looking
matter.
at other things. We can let them look at it, and if they can't do it, they can't do it. They'll come back to us and say, we couldn't do this, but we had them look at it. That's all I'm saying.
We should
Look
include
at
the, next Wednesday, we have the fall selection, we should include them in the conversation. We
Absolutely.
gotta remember one thing, these guys are volunteers.
Yeah.
Well,
Not
the-
really very
the
much, but that's
only-
fine, but
The only
we'll,
other thing I'll add is, and Lyle, you can correct me, out of the farmland committee and I believe the agricultural community, in order to increase the incentives regarding TDRs, if there could be increased receiving zones that would benefit the program.
Mhm.
And increase the number of TDRs, increase, quote, the value of TDRs.
Well, this is,
And so I think that's,
Well,
you know,
that's,
something that
that's,
the
well,
that's
that's
even
something you
bigger,
can look at too.
that's even a
And
bigger
we're back
picture.
to
When you're looking, Bill, you can look at where else can we
Right.
bring things.
I'm gonna go on the record,
Sending and receiving.
I'm gonna go on the record and see if there's 3 votes, because what I would like to see is the program that we initially talked about, which is the town will set the price every 3 months, if that's the appropriate amount. You'll get your 10 TDRs, 10 TDRs will equate to whatever the price is, to make that payment, and then you're done, you get your development fee. The $650,000 goes to the Farmland Select Committee, and they buy property wherever, and that's the town program. That's what I'm in favor of. There are 2 other board members that support that?
I would support that also, because it creates certainty, for every, I think it's definitely, So I would
There has
support
to be a
that.
balance between the farmers and the only way we can do a balance is streamline what we have.
I think what we have should be
You're fed
tossed
to that.
out.
I think something has to be done, otherwise you wouldn't be here, so.
I agree with that, Sean. I agree with that, but I don't want to hurt the small farmer that doesn't have the best soils, that wants to sell his land because he needs the money so he can keep farming it, and that may not be on the top of the Farmland Select list. I
right, that would have
agree
to be
that-
discussed,
Right.
policy with them as a separate
If we
issue.
met that position though, then you wouldn't have a problem with what Sean's talking
You could,
Yes.
you could put a provision in the Farmland Select Code that allowed for, hardship preferences or something.
Percentage of the sales would be
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
And if they want to sell them less, which we would allow them to do, we're gonna jump all over them.
Yeah, but
We may
that's-
put them as a
yeah,
priority,
that's-
so I think that you gotta give relief to them.
Now we're driving the market down.
That's up to
Well, I was gonna say,
them.
you gotta be careful with that.
We
I
got
think
it.
if you go with Sean's plan, but not make it exclusive, you answer Ms. Gigolo's concerns and Lyle's concerns at the same time.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you don't make it exclusive, because you're always,
You're probably setting a ceiling, but you're not by law
You don't
making
want
it
to compete with the
exclusive.
private side.
If somebody wants to sell for less, they can do it.
Or they can sell it less into the
And
bank,
they
so
can
to
come and
speak.
just TDRs. So-
but how can you set a ceiling?
you
Well,
know,
I mean, you're not setting a
That's
ceiling.
not the
In actuality, you're not saying it's ceiling, but who's gonna go out and pay more per TDR if they know the town's only gonna charge $65,000?
well, that's what I'm saying, you could leave it in there, it's irrelevant, because it's the developer's choice, it's always the developer's choice.
You're bringing in the economic hardship, because at the end of the day, you're right, you're not going more, you're going down. So at the end of the day, if somebody has a less desirable piece of property, again, like you said, some statute that they just have to look at more than just aesthetics, they have to look at, or the big picture, maybe other factors as well. That's on the farm, so I guess.
Yeah, that would be, that's not you just can come and purchase that you price.
If you set, if we set 2 programs, which I don't know that you legally can or can't, but if you set 2 programs, I will mark this day that the original program will never get used. Because the farmers would rather deal with the town than some guy from
Well, he
up
said
island.
no.
And,
He said his lawyers do.
and the farmers,
The farmers would be-
the only reason the farmer wouldn't go into the town program is because they thought they could get it less. And the farmers aren't going to sell it for less if the town has set the price. So what you've said, you could have both programs, but I don't see any scenario where the original program would work. How would it ever work?
No, I agree with what you're saying, I just think that it shouldn't be
We can
the
Then a false luck.
there's gotta be an alternative way to where the Farmland Select Committee says, you need 80 credits, and we want you to buy these 80, acres of prime soil farmland for $65,000 an acre. If that's available, and you can do it, that's great. If a guy comes in and says, I need to sell this because I have a hardship and I have this, and the Farmland Select Committee says, no, we don't want your property preserved, we'd rather see a house on it later on, whatever. That there should be an appeal process. So if there's appeal provision that's built into where they don't agree with the Farm Select Committee and they want to sell their property, they should be able to appeal to the town board to say, hey, I'm willing to sell my property for less and I want it to be part of this transaction. And as long as there's an appeal process for the farmer whose land is not as valuable as the prime soil that the farm select committee might want to consider.
You wanna
You
address
see,
that?
I have to bid,
You
I
may
have
sell
to
it cheap,
bid on
but
the
right
farm
off the
select
market,
committee
you
and
put
farm.
prices on it. This is more out there.
Because I
Because his
don't
law
own
market may be
property,
up
so
for.
I don't know what the value of the
I
property is.
just think
So
there's
how
gotta
can
be
I
a good
tell them,
process for everything.
Lyle, you have to sell for this price? He knows the value of his property, and he can then negotiate the value of his property with anyone who wants to.
The problem with that, John, the problem with that is that certain individuals, if the Havaseas send out 100 letters and get 0 responses to buy farmlands, then certain individuals that are willing to sell property are getting an artificially high rate because the town has this developer over a barrel. We are setting the artificially high rate.
Well, the last time, we were gonna have exactly that, when the town and the county were in the business of buying, you saw a number, it's just the economically more feasible.
Well,
So we stopped right there.
And I understand what Sean's saying. If we're saying to the developer, you have to buy 10 acres of development rights, right? So now you have to find a farmer that will sell you that. Lyle and the other farmers can say, gee, he needs me, right? So yes, are we artificially raising the price? At that point, we are. That's what this code does. I don't know how we can change this code to not to do that. I just,
Well, I think that's.
I don't know how we can do that, Anne Marie.
That's what I think I'm trying to propose, where it's gonna be an appraisal where we sort of set the price every 90 days
That's
or
what he's
something.
saying, but, you know,
I think that's fair.
If the town
Set up
sets
the
the
value.
price every 90 days and you do
I
it.
mean, you're adjusting every 90 days based on the market, based on appraisals, based on the
It's not gonna be,
economy, based on a lot of things.
you're not doing a $2,200 appraisal, you're doing an update to an appraisal
yeah,
once a
you
year.
know, if I look at it that way, you're right.
And just because
Okay.
prices are willing to sell it doesn't mean that there's a willing buyer.
Right, there has to be a
Hardship or no
And
hardship.
what could be a
Well,
willing
no
seller one
guarantees
day may not be
No,
one
we
the
do know we
next.
have a willing buyer, because we're not looking for the seller
Right.
unless we have the buyer.
Yeah, but just because I'm a willing seller doesn't mean that I'm guaranteed that mine will be bought.
Oh, correct.
We're basically
Sure.
doing the
House
same
is
thing
gonna
that
walk
the
into town,
developers
usually
do,
finds
but
out
just
where-
from the
I'm trying to
town,
look
by
at the
going down
farmers
to the
and keep
farmers and
every
listing
farmer on the
prospective
same
sellers and
level.
saying, are you willing to sell? And they go, well, I was willing to sell 6 months ago when times were tougher, but now my crops are doing better and I'm not, I don't want to sell.
Well, the meeting was about, the town, let's say the town was the exclusive line. The farm-
I think we're close, I think we're close.
We're close, but I think we gotta think about, we gotta talk about it.
Developer at any point, they don't have to develop, any
What is, Lyle, what was your point?
I have no problem with that, I just don't like the selection process.
Both Grant
As
and
to
Nicholas,
which-
They would-
we can't afford to have projects come to a standstill because of a program that the process is flawed. And that's why we're all sitting at the table. Grant wants to be assured, Citibank wants to be assured, or whoever they deal with, that these TDRs are available. No, end of story. They're there, right? So the only way to really guarantee that is the town to say, yes, we have them available, right? So if Grant can't find them in the open market, nobody responds to 100 letters, he comes to the town and says, hey, I want to continue, but I'm at a stalemate here. I can't buy development rights, nobody wants to sell them to me. What am I gonna do? Your zoning code dictates that I need development.
Okay, and I agree with you
Okay.
there. Let him
That's
go on the
the
open
problem we're
market,
trying to address today.
but then we should have a backup
Can you
and
do
have,
both programs?
That goes back to your vote program.
You could set up both programs, if you, I think you probably could legally set up both programs, because it is similar to what the Pine Barrens Commission, Pine Barrens Act has. I just think that the open market program will be,
No, we run 2 programs now. We run a PDR and a TDR program. The
well,
town
let's see if
runs
we can have the
One's
streamlined
extinguished,
program
one's
and then the other
extinguished.
program. Somewhat streamlined, I guess.
okay?
Can we see if we can do that, that we have the
Yeah.
streamlined program? I just,
I just wanna look at the
this
streamline and
program
see
is not
which
gonna
is
make
the
any
better
difference.
program, that's all.
I don't want the Havaseas of Riverhead or the Costco's or any of these guys to say, go to the bank and say, well, show us the credits,
Yeah.
And that's what they
and
do.
we'll give you the money.
And you got it.
You can't start anything until you show it.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
right, let's see if we can, and then, I mean, my personal opinion is, even if you have both tracks, it's only gonna be the town track that is ever used. But if the board wants to try to have both tracks, then let's see if legally we can have both tracks. We're always setting the price, it doesn't matter if once
You're
the
right,
government
Riverhead's
gets
gonna
into
set the trend.
So if you have, so you'll have two separate TDR codes, you can operate under either one.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate you
Thanks.
listening to us.
Bill, I think you're staying. You got caught up on this, didn't you? You weren't even supposed to.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
All right,
Take it easy, lad.
Thank you. It's really tremendous asset to downtown. It really is. Yeah.
Coffee box?
Yeah.
all right, we've got, I want to, George, I don't know, do you want to make that announcement or make that announcement? All right. Go ahead.
Let's see, okay. Next, we got Goofy on a couple of things. I just want to announce that the hunting season down at Epcal, the gun hunting season will be between January 7th and the 31st. In that period of like a little over 3 weeks, we're going to close the bicycle paths. So I just want to say that, so just,
Yeah, we don't have any choice. You
Yeah,
researched it.
we did
what
the
the
research,
county's
that's the way
doing,
the county
state's
does
doing.
it, the state does it.
What are you hunting, Bambi?
Yeah.
The hunters.
Deer hunters.
We don't want anybody to get hurt.
We don't want anyone to get hurt, it's a safety issue, we've looked, researched, state and
Don't
county.
shoot
that
that.
way.
So we'll put up signs.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna put a sign up in the trail saying the trail is closed from
Hunting
January
season.
7th,
Stay out.
January 31st, hunting season.
You're gonna put that on your website also, the town website?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on
Yeah,
town.
she's already on it, Arizona will put it up there.
Might be
And that's probably the coldest time of the year anyway, probably, we have snow and whatnot, so I think that
Yeah.
little
I
window.
hope we have some.
You hear a
It
gunshot, you
works.
pedal a little quicker, I can tell you that.
Dominique, did you have a question?
Yeah, just, it's on personal. Sometimes we do bike and walk through areas where there are hunters. And have you heard, and I've always been wondered, does that happen where sometimes there are accidents and the biker or pedestrian, the walker does get hurt?
That's
Other
why we
areas?
have hunting, that's why we're closing it to make sure it doesn't.
Right, but there are other areas where both happen at the same, where both occur
Yeah,
at the same
yeah,
time.
I'm not aware of
I
it.
haven't heard of anybody ever getting, a biker ever getting shot.
I don't know.
But that's why.
Neither have I.
Right, but if you look in the county parks, I was took a ride out yesterday to,
Oh, it's a chain shot.
Sears Bellows, Harbor, they've got the signs up there saying it's closed during hunting season. And the state does the same thing, so it's that January 7th to the 31st, it's a little
No,
over 3
well, I
weeks.
just answered her
Well, I
question.
That's
go
a
to
safe
long
thing.
parks. Sometimes
Yeah, I don't
go
know
on
of anything, but
farmland or other
it's
places
kind of
where there are hunters and
Preventive,
walkers.
preventive thing.
But where do you work?
Not in Epcal.
I'm sure we can make it happen.
All right, so I'll get the signs up. ZBA building, planning board appointment criteria. Mr. Duffy, what you really came here for, not the other thing you got sucked into.
Okay, criteria. I only found one town that had some criteria for the planning or ZBA.
Which is that? Which town?
Brookhaven.
Brookhaven, huh? Wow, imagine that.
Supervisor Ed Romaine, doing a fantastic job. See,
They changed, they went outside the, in the home rule went outside town law, they increased their membership to 7. And they require one person to be a licensed architect, and either 2 members to be an architect, engineer, licensed attorney, or environmentalist. Then 4 positions for community at large.
But there are award districts there, so,
I wouldn't want to expand our board.
no.
Right, and the only problem I see between the town the size of Brookhaven and the town in Riverhead
Right.
is if you have somebody that's a licensed architect or an engineer, essentially, their practice would have to be outside the town of Riverhead because they can bring an application before the board while they were on it. So, I mean, if they had any, it cut them off from doing business in the town they are.
He couldn't.
So we might have trouble bidding those, seating those people as opposed to the town of Brookhaven.
I would really want to do, I don't want to dictate types of professions. I just want to maybe we just would codify what's in the state code, but they have CLE, not CLE, but they have professional training requirements
Yes.
in the state code. I would think that we would just codify that and maybe make it a little more
I agree.
reporting requirements so that we know that it's on file here, and that's really all I would be looking at, because I'm not gonna tell you, you're right, that licensed architect, engineer, licensed attorney, and what is an environmentalist? I'm an environmentalist, and Theodore Roosevelt
We all
was
are,
an
to
attorney.
a certain extent.
That's a stretch, Sean.
Listen, I purchased more farmland than anybody,
It's part of your
so
job, not
I'm
part of your will.
I'm an environmentalist.
Using our tax dollars.
So,
Yeah, I don't think this is quite what you want to do.
The town-
Any vacancy is still filled by the town.
Under town law, that they are supposed to have certain number of continuing education credits, whatever.
can we codify that?
Sure.
I think that would be more important, and then make some reporting requirements so that they are,
Yeah.
posted, and not, put in a file someplace. Yeah, I know it's supposed to be, but
It's supposed, yeah, the town law is supposed to be doing that.
They do.
Yeah, I think
Codify
that
that.
instead
Yeah,
of
they
going,
do. 'Cause I agree
going
with
with,
that.
You're right.
one course every 4 years, we should have something that they have to do this yearly.
Yeah, the town law, I think it's a
That's
yearly.
town law.
Yeah, they
it's a
currently
yearly
do.
requirement.
Annual.
It's supposed to they're supposed to notify the board of.
I think a certain civic member asked me, did they get that done? Ms. DeVito?
Yeah,
They
they
did.
haven't. No, I haven't seen 10 years worth of certificates.
Oh, well.
Oh, I don't know if it's 10 years.
I know, they just did, they just all put
That's
themselves
because a
in line
certain,
They
for
did,
reappointment in
community activists
January
that
by
Yes.
then. Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
but that's why if we put it in the code, it's gonna be a little closer to home for them. So let's try to codify, if you wanna tighten that up a little bit, I think that would be good, but to
I think
dictate,
that,
we can't even find qualified people to do half the things we need in this town.
I think that resumes of people that apply for these positions with the personal information redacted should be available to the public. It's in the case they want to comment when it does come up for a vote, that whether or not these people are qualified and do you know what I'm saying? I think that,
I don't agree with
because
that.
these classes, like the Association of Towns and the other code classes, some people take them seriously, other people don't pay attention to a darn thing that's going on in these classes. So how does going to those classes once a year or once every 4 years actually qualify them for a position if they're not paying attention? You can't force them to pay attention.
Half of the CLE courses, more than half of the CLE courses that lawyers go
I
to
know.
are just
I would,
not what you would expect them to be.
right.
So it's not gonna matter, it's always gonna be that case, whether it's with them, with
You
the
always make
association
But
of
you
towns.
already have, but as a lawyer, Sean, you already have the credential to do the job that you are putting forth to do. The difference here is that with your ZBA planning boards, ARB, CAC, whatever it is, IDA, you do not have people that come forward with credentials to put in place what the law says that they're supposed to be
Yeah,
doing.
we don't have people apply, period,
You know.
in some of these positions,
Well,
believe
that's
me.
true, you don't, and the thing is that and it may be because people don't realize that those positions, for example, annually, you have at least one seat on the ZBA and planning board that come up, and they don't realize that that is a process there. Or perhaps what the town could consider is, rather than submission of resumes and letters of interest, put an online application for that, so that you don't have to redact personal information, it just would have your name and whatever else you're asking for. And you may get a greater pool of people if there is a bit more talking about and advertising and getting out there about filling these particular positions.
Could be right. Dominic, I guess we're just opening this up. What did you want to say?
Yeah, it wasn't so much a matter of training, but that you appoint people, since that, especially on the planning board and the ZBA, they're making very important decisions. And we think that they should have some minimal requirements for that, so that it isn't just someone off the street who really has no knowledge of it. We don't think that person should be in a position right off to be able to make those important decisions. And it's not a matter of, setting a quota, because we know that would be way too restrictive for a town like Riverhead. But that's why we suggested like 2 years and with a variety, some sort of experience, and we listed the type of experience. But we think that to make those decisions, you should start with some minimal qualifications.
But Dominic, a lot of people that have the education, and a lot of people that do not have education have common sense. And some of these things, you have to look at, especially on the ZBA, is common sense. So, you know,
It's a lot more than common sense.
it's a lot more, but the educated people, a lot of them go by, this is the law, and we're not gonna waiver this way, where sometimes common sense comes into it, and says, hey, we have to waiver, and we have to do this, or we don't have to do
Yeah,
it.
I certainly.
That's what I'm saying. You know, we have a lot of people that have good knowledge, that haven't gone to college, are not engineers, are not architects, are not lawyers, but they have a lot of input into these things, and I think those are the people have to be considered too. And the resumes are great, but I just don't like to put them out to the public. I mean, that's, you know, I don't go put them out to the public, because,
But the name and the experience is the same thing
Yes,
as an
you-
application
you
process
could
online.
put that out,
You redact
but-
personal
yes.
information,
like,
but we have to have a way
but I
to
don't think we
touch
should
them.
limit it.
But
I
it
know
doesn't-
it would show up.
Why don't we do
Common sense
this?
is
Why don't we do this?
Well,
Maybe there's
because-
some,
No, it
a
hasn't.
flavor of the type of members that could be
I
put
think,
in
I
this.
think you're right, I mean,
You know.
it's nice to have, you know, let's face it, a lot of times there's patronage jobs, and sometimes the person with the best qualification isn't getting it.
They always
Right.
are. I mean, come on.
But
So
They
let's
always
be
are.
realistic.
They
I
are.
think
Well,
that
we-
there is,
They never, they never vary.
You can still find qualified people.
I think that with the zoning board of appeals, there's a criteria as to whether or not an application should be approved or should not be approved. So,
No, there's not.
yes, there is, there's town law, 278A and B, and when it comes to a use variance, you have to prove that the zoning on the property
zoning,
is
their
not conducive
qualifications,
to
yeah.
the use of the property because of the setting or what have you. You have to
Supposed to.
prove
Yeah.
certain things, nature and character of neighborhood,
Right.
whether or not it's so you have to,
Right,
you
yeah.
have certain criteria that you have to meet
That's right.
and present to a zoning board in order to get a variance, not just, I want it.
Theoretically,
So if there was a test or something for a zoning board member that they studied the local law to determine what those tests are and they're familiar with them in certain cases. Kind of like what we did, what I did in college in Law 101, which is
We don't
they
know
give
what
you
you did
certain
in college.
cases and they say, how would you, react to this?
Well, listen, let's regroup, I don't wanna be very specific, let's regroup, let's take the town law section
Mhm.
and maybe we add a flavor of the
Right.
type of individual
Yes.
we're looking for without having
Perfect.
specific,
Perfect.
yeah, that's definitely
Education
not for both those
requirements,
positions.
okay?
All right, what else you got, Bill?
Parking lot,
If I ask me to step in on this also.
building department parking lot. Why are we talking
I
about
thought
it?
that was finished.
It is, but originally,
You didn't help fix up the apartment complex here, didn't you?
originally trying to work out a deal with the apartment complex and the dry cleaners where the whole thing got paid for once. And thought we had a deal in place and then, it's my understanding that the town decided not to go ahead with that. So we paid the building department complex, the building department parking lot. And then the person in the complex said, hey, I thought we had a deal to do it all at once. And
Why did we back out? I don't remember.
I think there was some concern about spending, laying out the money and trying to recoup it from the private entity.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
So, well, now he's proposed that he would to highlight an area he would have paved, and then we would reimburse him. If he lays out the money, we would reimburse him.
We have to pay this now is what he's asking, us to pay?
He's asking if he gets that area paved, I'm assuming there'd be some type, we'd be able to use it also, then we would give him reimbursement for half of it, not the whole thing.
This is the dry cleaner side.
I believe so.
Yes. Not the apartment
Right.
side.
So what kind of number are we looking at here?
16,000.
16,250 and half of that, or the 16,000?
It's not half.
Half of that, you're looking at 8,000.
Was there anything written saying that, but if we were gonna split it, why would we reimburse him? In other words, if we split it, in theory, he would pay his and we would pay ours, why would we be reimbursing him?
I think because it's his property, so he's agreeing. I think what happened the last time it was, the proposal was that the town would just pay it all and then we recoup the monies back from the people. Now he's saying he'll pay it and then try and get his half back in the town afterwards. if that's
Can
what
we even
that's-
do that with prevailing wage and the laws that we have to abide by versus what a private property owner has to abide by and who they contract with for certain work?
I just don't know why we would even, if we were gonna split it, okay, well, we didn't. Just let him go pay his.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to know if there was any interest by the board to do this. We won't take it any farther if there isn't. If there is, then we'll.
Like the 16,000 will only cost us 8,000?
That's my understanding.
That was what you said.
But why would we even do that? Why wouldn't he just pay? Because in theory, if we were splitting the cost of the whole job, he probably would have paid 16,000. Am I missing something? Or were we supposed to split the cost of
And we
this?
do have a right of way over that property.
I don't think so.
Next
No,
to
we
it, right
can't.
away.
Next to it,
That's
not
old.
not the whole thing.
That's the old map.
150.
Isn't that the old map?
When you talk about a strip 15 feet by 119 feet, that's far less than the whole parking lot.
Yeah, it's not the whole.
Why would he pay for half the parking lot?
Right, that's what I'm saying. If we were splitting the cost of everything, we would have
Yeah,
rolled
why-
the whole bill in. And
He's like
just-
saying, hey, listen, while you're doing it, I'm willing to pay for my share, is what he's trying to say.
Now he wants us to pay for his share.
No, he's just willing to pay 18 grand.
I'd rather take the money and give Jeff the sidewalks and town hall.
I don't think he owns the other side of the parking lot. The apartment house probably owns that side.
No, that's the owner of the apartment. Andrew Maggio is the owner of the apartment building.
I thought this was, no.
I'm pretty sure.
He
it's-
said this is the dry
I
cleaning.
might have.
Right,
That's
this is
the
in
apartment
front of the
building.
drive-thru.
I'm almost
That's
positive,
right. That's it.
almost positive he owns the apartment building.
I could have been wrong, John. I won't have to jump in on this, so it could be wrong.
The drive-thru
I
is
started
over
this
here.
before I left in
This is
2005.
Do we have specifications for, I mean, this meets our specifications, 1.5 inch
I'm not paying
compacted.
for this.
We haven't really looked into it, just like Bob just said, if the board's inclined to into some type of deal,
Yeah.
we'll look into it further, but right now we didn't do a lot of work on it. If there's no interest in.
No, because my philosophy on this split the cost would mean roll the whole paving, my paving, your paving in,
For the parking.
and you pay 50, I pay 50.
He's living over
Now
here.
you're just paying your 50 and we pay our,
Yeah, this is her property here,
unless it's in writing.
right? It's all in the middle.
Yeah.
All
This is-
right, all right away. We have a right of way over there?
And this is
Yeah,
our
we
right,
can put all that stuff.
That works.
Do we have deeded right
Yeah,
of
we
way
just
over
take
our
our-
property? We have deeded right of way on his property.
I don't think so. I think
We do have a right of way over his property,
but it's not used that way.
No, we used to, what happened was,
Separating
I
ours
think
from
this
his.
is the old,
Let his be from.
we didn't, I think this is the old survey, isn't it?
This is on map, this doesn't show the new configuration of the parking lot.
Yeah, we didn't own,
We removed some tanks over
we
here.
didn't own where the parking lot is right here. We owned this right of way. So the trade was, we took over where the parking lot is over here, and we sold him, or we traded this for what is our parking lot.
That's correct.
It was a swap, I think it was an even swap. And while I was dealing with in '05, I don't remember us ever talking about who was paying for the asphalt. But I'm not, unless it's written down, I'm not paying for the asphalt. Okay, anything else? Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye.
Any more, any more